a lot of this I haven't shared at all. I mean, it wasn't uncommon for me to be outside at night, just walking the street or whatever, or hanging out outside of my house and hear limbs snap in the woods. And I just think deadfall, no big deal. But it was constantly, it was a lot of it, more than usual. But I mean, then again, we're talking mountains and mountains of woods, and out my back door, walk a straight line, it's miles with nothing. I mean, no houses up there, nothing, not even a shack, shed, nothing. And that's unusual, right? I mean, you walk in the woods, eventually you're going to find a barn or something, but there's nothing. I mean, the only road or anything or trail I hit up through there was just that old logging road that was approximately 300 yards out my back door up to that logging road. But I started feeling like I was being watched, and it kind of made me a little uneasy, but I was a stupid kid. I didn't think a whole lot about it. And I'd been going up through there and seeing these little stick figures, thought it'd be funny to knock one down, out of the tree and break it. Dumb 13-year-old kid, right? Some of these structures I'd pushed over and, messed around. Well, I had this bright idea of hiking way back up in there and setting up a camp. It's like, man, there's this big pond back here, and I'll go up here and I'll fish it overnight and camp out in my little lean-to. And so what I did, I went up there and I set me up a lean-to and set me up a little camp. But I got an uneasy feeling while I was there, and I'm like, okay, I've got a lantern. I'm going to walk back home. I'll do it another day. So I went back to the house, and, several days later, I just, okay, well, we'll go back up there. Whatever animal it is might have moved on through. Well, it didn't. I went up there and it had tore down my lead-to, and it put its structures back up. I'm like, all right, you know what? You done made me mad. I took over this camp. This is my camp. And what I did was pretty stupid. I started setting on my list again, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to make this thing mad. I thought it was funny to make this thing mad. So I went up to several of the trees, and I took a leak on them, and I peed up as high as I could on those trees. Several of them. That wasn't a good idea. I got this uneasy feeling again, and I got out of there. I went home. Well, I waited 2-3 weeks, and I guarantee you there was no storms, no rain, no strong winds or nothing. I decided I'm going to go back up here and check out that area again. I just want to go up there and go fishing in that lake. So I hiked back up there, and this mountaintop where I'd taken a leak on this structure and those trees, just imagine a giant with a gigantic sword and swing and sieve all the trees off 6 to 8 feet in the air. All of them, the whole mountaintop. Any tree that was 8 inches or lower diameter was just sliced clean off. That's what it looked like. I mean, they were shattered. And I was like, oh no, something is mad. And my blood ran cold. I got chills. I'm getting chills and goosebumps right now talking about that. But I mean, something was mad. And I mean, it was at least an acre of trees. It was just sheared clean off like that on the top of a mountain. So, sorry, chills.
That's all right. Take your time.
I pulled out my knife and I slowly eased my way off that mountaintop. And I felt like something was following me. I had this, poop feeling. I mean, my blood was running cold. Best way to describe the feeling I had coming out of there is having a snarling dog following you, ready to attack. But you can't see it. But I could hear it, leaves quite a ways off, but I couldn't see it. And the only explanation I have for not being able to see it is if you're out deer hunting and the deer is in the brush 50, 100 yards off and it stops moving, it literally will disappear if you're not trained to look for that shape. I mean, it happens all the time. Deer will be walking through the leaves and stuff. They blow in so good, they stop, gone until they move again. And anyway, I worked my way out of there. It took hours. And I just knew I was in trouble walking out of there. I mean, something was following me. And every now and again, when I would look, I would see something move behind a tree at a distance. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to make it to the house. It was closer for me to come down the side of the mountain to my friend's house. So that's what I did. I come down the side, hit that logging road, and coming down the side of that mountain, I was having rocks thrown at me. And I would hear stick breaking and tree knocks and whoops and, just all kinds of noises start coming from the woods as I start getting closer to civilization. I climbed down that gully and back up the other side to my friend's house, and they had been grounded. Well, they were outside doing yard work, and I sat down at their picnic table, and my back was probably 15 feet from where that gully went down, where we had cleared it out, but everywhere else was so steep, loose rocks, choked with briars and vine and brush, you couldn't get through there. I mean, if you did, me or you guys, I mean, we'd have to be up there with a machete and climbing ropes to get through there. It's not possible to cross it. Needless to say, I put it out of my mind what was going on. Not going back up there, fine, it's over. They had to go in the house, and we had sat around and talked. Street lights came on. It got dark. Parents realized they weren't in the house. They got grounded. I was sent home, and it was about 9 o'clock at night. Street lights are on, and the street lights are on the opposite side of the road of the gully. I'm like, oh no, something was following me out of the woods, and now I'm going home in the dark. I'm in trouble. So I go to the road, and about 100 yards down from my friend's house towards my house is this red brick house. And it's abandoned, it's falling in, half the roof is gone. But on the back side of it, there's a wall that sticks out about 3 or 4 feet and just ends. And this wall's 8 foot. All around this house are grapevines and briars, because we sneak in there and what blackberries and stuff we can get to and what grapes, but you couldn't go back in there. It was real thick. So I approach this house, and as I get to the beginning of this house, I get this, oh crap feeling again. And then I start smelling this horrid smell. It's like wet dog and rotten flesh and maybe a little bit of burn smell. It was horrible. And my heart like literally stopped in my chest. I mean, breathing was a task. I was terrified whenever I smelled it. And I'm like, okay, maybe whatever this is, I could tiptoe past it. So I move over into the shadows, which is closer to the house. The street light is illuminating the other side, and I figure if I'm in the shadows, I can sneak by it. So I start easing by this house, one tiptoe at a time, real slow. I'm looking around, trying to figure out why I have this feeling, again, of like a snarling dog getting ready to attack, and I don't know where it is. So I start sneaking by this house, and I get to the far end of that house, and I 1 or 2 steps past the corner of that house. The house is about 8 feet to my right. The wall is about 15 feet off the edge of the road to my right. And the moon happened to be almost full that night. It had a good backdrop. Well, I heard some noise in the brush over there, and I turned and looked. I turned completely and looked, and I saw this figure crouched down in the brush. It stood up, and this thing had shoulders on it that would make a linebacker scared. I mean, this thing was big. It was wide. Its shoulders were a good 4 feet wide. And it stood up, and its shoulder was just about even with the top of that 8-foot brick wall. It looked like it had no neck. Its head come up and had a slight cone shape to its head, but it wasn't really dome shaped. It was curved, like it had a ridge.
Mm-hmm. I
couldn't see its eyes because the moonlight was behind it, but I could see its silhouette. And, this thing is just massive. I could see its waist, but I couldn't see its hands. Its waist was above the height of those brush, 4.5, 5 feet, but its hands were way below its waist. It was only 2 or 3 seconds I stood there looking at this thing, didn't know what to do. And then it did this screaming roar. And the roar lasted for 2 or 3 seconds, but it felt like it hit me. So I remember when it hit me, I took a step back, but I felt it in my bones. I mean, the force of the scream was just unbelievable. You could stand in front of a train horn and they blast a train horn. That's not that strong. I mean, this thing was a screaming roar. And when the scream stopped, I was gone. I mean, I was gone down that hill running as fast as I possibly could. And again, to remind you, this hill is too steep to ride a bicycle down. I don't know how I managed it, but I ran down this hill. And I heard it crash through those brush. And I heard a smack, and I assume, in hindsight, it may have tripped, slapped its hand on the road, pulled itself up, and came after me. It chased me down that hill, and when I hit the curve to my road, I leaned into that curve like a motorcycle rider. I mean, I leaned into it, and I kept going. As I made that turn, it grabbed the back of my shirt, and the back of my shirt was ripped off. I didn't know it at the time, but I got light fingernail scratches down my back, 4 of them that were really, really widely spaced. I ran up there, and I snatched open that front door, slammed it shut, locked it, and I dove under my bed. Now, on this house that we lived in, there was 2 bedrooms. That was it. One for my sister and one for my mom and dad. My room was a sun porch. It had 3-foot wall and then glass from there to the ceiling, 3 walls. They hung up heavy drapes so I could have privacy. And then like on each side of the front door was a drape, like a hallway. But that was my room. Anyway, my dad come running in there, and he grabbed me by the ankle and yanked me out from under that bed. And I'm screaming and swinging, and I'm full of panic mode. And he's like, "What the H is wrong with you?" And I finally come through, and all I could say was something chased me, and it almost got me. And they're like, "What is it?" I'm like, I have no idea what it is. I don't know. It chased me to the house. And my dad turned around, and there was a shadow, because there was a street light out in front of our house. A shadow went by the side window of the house. It just blocked out the whole window, and then the window was back. He walked over to the window. He put the curtain back slowly, and he turned around and he goes, "Boy, what the heck did you bring out of those mountains to us?" And he was white as a sheet when he said it.
Yeah, when I was young, I used to run down into southern Indiana and all them woods, but I was usually with a group of people. We didn't run into anything. But most of the time I lived my life in Indianapolis or Omaha or, New York when I was stationed in New York. I was always around the city. The only time I really was in any kind of jungle or woods was when I was in the service. Now, the next thing that happened was when I was actually deployed into Vietnam. And I was on patrol, and we were rushed by about, 10 to 12 rock apes. Now, the rock apes are just what they say. They're an ape. They're a 2-legged, walking on 2-legged apes. And they go 5 to 6 pounds, or 5 to 6 feet, I'm sorry. And I would say probably 300 pounds or better. They were just nothing but a mass of muscle. And they got the name rock ape because they used to pick up these huge rocks and throw them at vehicles and at people. And they just wouldn't go down with rifle fire. The M16s back then, the 223 rounds, 5.56 actually, rounds just didn't seem to have much of an effect against them. And we ended up having to use grenades to chase them off because the rifles were doing nothing. And, I'd heard stories from other vets. As a matter of fact, I got a Marine friend that dealt with them. And they had to literally bring in 50 cal machine guns to chase them off when they started throwing rocks at the troops and the vehicles. So they were a bit of a problem, but you didn't hear much about it because it was rare. Everybody knew they were there from the stories, but it was rare to actually run into them. So there's that story. I mean, there wasn't much to that story, but that's a fact. There again, another Sherman moment, because there was only 8 of us, and there was about a dozen of them. So it was it was a little scary. In 1996 or 7, okay, I would just gotten out of the Army in 95. And it hadn't been all that long since I'd been back from Desert Storm. And so, I was still in pretty good shape. And I met this girl, lady, whatever. She was 18 years younger than I am, but we got along and we hit it off really good. We went on several dates and everything was going well. So one night it was a nice late summer night. We decided to go for a ride. I had a Jeep, took the roof off, and we took off. And there's this park, Hummel Park is what it's called. It's about 10 miles north of Omaha. So we went there to go to the lookout. You have to drive up and up and up and up, and then you get up to the top, and there's a lookout there. So we went up to the lookout, got out, looked over it. You could see for miles all the landscape and the woods, and the Missouri River was right there, and it was quite beautiful, actually. Well, we were there talking and looking at the sights, and then she tells me she has to go to the bathroom. She needs to tinkle. So I said, okay, so we were out in the middle of nowhere at this park. It's 11:30 at night. There wasn't anybody there. So she just decided she was just going to open the door and do her duty there. And so I said, okay, I went the other side of the car and turned my back, being a gentleman. And as she was doing that, just a few moments after that, I wouldn't say screamed, but it was an alarming sound. So I reached in the car because after I got back from Desert Storm, I didn't go anywhere without being armed. I had a 1911 45, and I also had either a Bowie knife or a machete. Well, that night I had the machete, so I grabbed him out of the car and I came around the front of the car and I saw her. She was shaking, and I looked at her face and she was scared, and then she pointed, and I looked at about 25 yards away, well, not yards, but feet away from us was a dog, and it was a big dog, and it was standing up on its back legs. And I immediately moved in between it and her, and just looked at it, and it was just looking at me, and then it smiled. Now, talk about something creepy. When you see a dog smile, that it was a little scary. So I thought, well, we're at a standoff here. We can't go anywhere because all around us was, 100-foot drop off. The only way we could go is back the way we came in, and that damn dog was standing there. So I thought, well, if it's going to smile at me, I'm going to smile back. So I screwed up the most evil grin I could come up with, and I dragged that machete along the ground and raised the 45, and I took a step forward. I mean, what else was I going to do? And it barked, and it just took off. It just took off. It just booked it. And then up out of the brush came 2 more of these damn things. Now, I didn't know they were there. Neither did she. Neither one of us knew. They were in the brush right next to us. Couldn't have been 20 feet away. And they took off following him. And needless to say, we got the hell out of there in a hurry. Now, as a description, it looked like a dog, only standing up. I mean, it wasn't an Arnold Schwarzenegger looking thing with the big muscles and all that. It was not that big. I'm 6 feet, 210. Well, at the time I was. It was kind of hunched over, so it would be hard to say how tall it would have been standing up. But hunched over, it was about my height. And I would say at the most it weighed 250. But the thing of it was, I think it was a youngster, because I think they were just out and they thought it would be a fun game to play. And then they changed their mind when I made that aggressive move. and they decided to get out of there. And it was a dark color. The face looked like something. It looked like a Doberman and a German Shepherd got together and had a baby. That's what the face looked like. A cross between those two breeds. It didn't look like a wolf. The other two that took off were about the same size as it. So I'm thinking it was maybe a group of youngsters that hadn't had a face-to-face encounter with a human before. And, everybody knows that most of these cryptids know what a gun is, and I had a gun and that great big blade. I don't know, maybe it just decided that it wasn't worth it. And it took off. And I'll tell you one thing, when they say they're fast, believe it. I mean, they were out of sight in a matter of just seconds. And we got in the car and took off.
Did you notice their hands? Did they have the hands, the claws, or were they?
You know what? I didn't pay that much of attention. Look, I was looking at this thing's face. I wanted to see his eyes because, I wanted to know what he was going to do.
Right.
So I didn't really see any hands. I'm sure they did have hands. He had long arms, so I can tell you that. And I know they weren't paws. When he ran away, I could tell they weren't paws. If they were like raccoon paws or raccoon hands. But like I said, it was kind of traumatic. So I wasn't paying that much attention at that. I was paying more attention to getting her the hell out of there. So, so we got out of there, and unfortunately after that, she decided that I must have been one crazy SOB because I never heard from her again. Now that's a lie because she tracked me down a couple of years ago on Facebook and we're talking again. But, I hadn't seen her in 25 years. So,
okay.
But anyway.
Did you guys talk about, are you guys talking about that experience? Have you brought that up?
No, hell no.
She never brought it up, so you're not gonna?
No, she did not want to talk about it. I said, remember the park? And she goes, no. That kind of told me, okay, we'll talk about something else. Well, I know she was scared. She shook all the way home. So,
yeah. Did you see these things walking on two legs or just standing up? Did they run on four legs when they took off, or what?
When I first saw it, it was just standing there. Now, when he took off, the one that I confronted, when he took off, he was on two, but I noticed that he dropped down to four when the other two came out of the bush, and they came out on all fours. So the one that I confronted, he ran on two legs for a while and then dropped down as the other two caught him. And then they all took off. And I mean, at a high rate of speed. I was amazed how fast they were. Greyhound wouldn't have a chance. So, I don't know what to tell you. And I still to this day think they were youngsters because of every count I listened to or ever heard of, these things are huge and monstrous and all this. These just look like dogs. I mean, I'm serious. I think when he was standing there, I noticed that the upper torso, was more like a human, but it still was a dog size. You know what I mean? But it did, it didn't have, it had the hocks. The arms came straight off the sides like a human and kind of hung out. Now, like I said, I only saw that because I was looking at his face and I could see his shoulders. He had shoulders though. Not like a dog. I mean, so yeah, okay, he was a little more human-like, so just smaller.
He had some human.
Yeah.
So yeah, he probably was. They probably were young ones.
Well, that's the only thing I can think of because, like I said, he wasn't that big. He was my size. But what I could tell you one thing, looking in them eyes, you could see the intelligence. That's why I was watching his eyes. I wanted to see what he was going to do. He wasn't a dummy. He was smart, and I think he figured out that this might not be a fun game to play.
That's why I think it. Yeah, you're right. They're probably the young ones because I mean he smiled at you, like all right.
Well, I've heard a lot of accounts where they do that just to frighten you because they show all them teeth that way. And he had some teeth, I will say that.
Well, I'll have to start out a little bit, give you a go around, I guess. Deer hunt season started here on a Monday, and me and my stepson and my brother all went to down on a farm that we hunt. There's a 500-acre farm that we hunt. I've hunted there since 1966. Me and my brother hunted there forever, and our uncle had farmed the farm, and we went down there on a Monday morning. And of course, got up early and left and drove down there. And my stepson always liked to hunt up on the high ground, up on a look like a little high patch up there. There was a pasture and some woods, and he always liked to hunt down in that area because of the cornfields. Well, where we was at, we went on down, and there's about probably 30 acres of woods, I would imagine, down in there. And then we went down there, and we just kind of sat on there was just a couple old stumps that I sat down, and my brother went on down farther to, which would, if I sat down on the stump, it would have been to my right. He went down, sat on another stump. Well, we sat there all day, and normally the first day of deer season, there'll be deer you'll see that morning, and usually we kill something the first day. Well, that day, nobody killed anything. So it come nighttime, and we come up out of there, and we never really noticed it till my stepson said, "Did you guys notice how quiet it was all day?" And, we didn't realize it till he said something about it, but there wasn't a bird, there wasn't anything making any noise. There wasn't a bee, there wasn't any insects, there wasn't anything chirping, there wasn't a squirrel, there was nothing. And usually the squirrels are thick down there. So we never thought much about it. We went up, went home. Next day, my stepson wanted to go to his dad's. So me and my brother went down, and we got on our stand and got down in there, and we sat down on the same stumps that we sat on. And he went on farther down past where I was at and sat down on the stump. I'm sitting there, and it's about 10 or 10:30 of a morning, and I hear him shoot, but it's like pow, pow. So I jump off because I kind of sat back in the woods. So I jumped out to see what he was shooting at. And when I looked down there, it looked like a big, ginormous German Shepherd dog that was running with hind legs towards him. So he shot, he was shooting, and you could see that he was hitting it in the chest. And so I put up the gun I was using, and which we weren't supposed to use rifles, but that was way before they allowed rifles in Ohio. But we were kind of outlawing it, and when I put the rifle up, I shot and hit it in the shoulder, the right shoulder, because it was running straight at him. And then the second shot I shot, I hit it right in the temple, hit it right in the side. But when it fell down, it scratched my brother. It cut him. It scratched him on his left side of his chest. Cut a gash in him. So I ran down there, and this thing's deader than a doornail by then, And we're wondering what it is, because it looked like, if you ever seen the Van Helsing movie when Van Helsing is fighting with the vampire there towards the end, that's exactly what it looked like. Only maybe a little, maybe a little bit different, but almost exactly that way. And so we took it took 5 rounds of a .358 Winchester in his chest and never slowed it down. And I hit it with the .308 rifle that I had in his right shoulder and the temple. When I hit it in the temple with the same gun, that's what killed it. Or we assume that's what killed it. But so we ran up, and I got the old Jeep we had and got my brother and got him loaded up in there, and we went up to the house. And when we got up there, my uncle's wife had called it in that it had been a dog or an animal attack. So while we were waiting for the ambulance to come, the game warden came, 2 game wardens came, the sheriff came, and dog warden guy came. Well, we told him it wasn't a dog. It was, we tried to explain to them what it was, but they kind of thought we were crazy. I mean, they thought we were nuts, I'm telling you. And I had a buddy that was in the Ohio Department of Natural Resources. He only had one guy ahead of him in the Natural Resources that was hunting on a farm just a couple farms down from us, and he heard it on his radio. So he came up to see what was going on, see everything, what was happening. we said, okay, I'll take you down and show you what it is. And I got them in the old Jeep, and they got a couple of trucks, and they drove down in there. And of course, this was before I had a cell phone, or my brother had a cell phone or anything. And they were snapping pictures with like Nikon cameras. They all had like big cameras they were taking pictures of this thing with. And this thing was probably more than likely, 7.5 feet tall, big, probably weighed 400 pounds. And it was big. I'm telling you, it was big. But it had backward legs like a dog on its back legs, but its front, well, I guess his front legs, it looked like a man's arms with just big claws on it. I mean, the claws were 3 inches long, themselves. And, but it had like big canine teeth, and it looked just like a German Shepherd dog in the face. Big, only way bigger. Had a body like a bodybuilder, like, you've seen pictures of old Arnold Schwarzenegger when he was in his prime. That's what it looked like. The upper body did. Now, the lower body was real thin and real slim, other than its legs. Its legs were huge. Its legs were evidently had run or whatever. But they had all wondered what it was. They were all trying to ask them if they'd ever seen anything like this. Of course, game warden guys didn't know. The sheriff didn't know. Nobody knew what it was. And the more it went out over the radio, the more these game warden guys came flying in, and more the sheriffs came in to see it. And like I said, it was just a crazy thing. But I could tell you, my brother won't talk to you, but I'll tell you this side. He took, and before he started shooting, he said he's seen these things coming across the field. There was 3 of them, he said. Said it was a big one that we shot, and there was 2 smaller ones. One that was kind of way smaller, and then was one about half again as big between them. And he said he thought the neighbors have German Shepherds and Doberman Pinscher dogs. And he thought it was one of those dogs, some of them dogs. And he said he just watched it. They would come across the field an open cornfield that had been just shelled corn. Said they come across it and said that they got within about 125 yards. My brother said he said he kept his hat down over just where he could look underneath the bill of his hat just to see it. He tried to keep his face covered. And he said this old bigger one just stood up and he just sniffed up in the air, was sniffing the air. Next thing you know, he made a growl or a grunt. He said the other 2 run down towards where the river are. So the river is. And Rick said this thing looked at him, and he said he swears it grinned at him or smiled at him because it showed its teeth and just like a big grin. And said it just took off, stood up on its hind legs, and he said that's when he freaked clear out because he said I never seen a dog run on its hind legs before. But it ran across there and ran at him, and that's when he started shooting. That's when I stepped out and started shooting. But this thing run, when I think back on it, it reminds me of how, you ever seen how a Tyrannosaurus Rex kind of runs, lean forward? That's how this thing was running, kind of leaning forward when it run. But it tore my brother, went through a Carhartt jacket, he had a pair of Carhartt bib overalls on, and it cut the strap on the bib overalls. Plus he had 2 flannel shirts, plus he had an insulated shirt, big heavy insulated shirt, and a t-shirt, and it went through all that and cut his left shoulder. Cut up on his, like where his left chest was, like where your heart might be, like above where your heart would be. And but it made a scratch, and it made a lunge at him when it finally killed it, and it just made a lunge at him and scratched at him. But we, game warden and everybody's there, and we're asking them what they're going to do. They want to help load it up, but then it's getting late in the evening, and they said no, they were going to leave it there. They left a guy there that was a new guy for the game warden guys, young guy, and it had an old Jeep Wagoneer or Gladiator, whatever. I mean, the old station wagon type Jeep. And they had him stay there. He's going to stay there all night. Well, the next morning, when I went to the hospital, my brother to get my brother that night. I'll kind of tell you a little story that's kind of funny about it. My brother said that he's telling these guys it's not a dog bite. They kept calling it a dog bite. It's not a dog bite. My brother said it's a werewolf. And he said these two sheriffs were standing in there with him. And he said he just kept telling his doctors, it's a werewolf. I've seen this werewolf. It's a werewolf. It isn't a dog. It isn't a dog bite. It's a werewolf. So he said that he was sitting there in the bed, and he said he heard this guy say, one of the doctors outside said, well, we got kind of a guy in here must be kind of a loony in here. Said, want to keep an eye on him. And my brother said he looked around at that sheriff and told the sheriff, he said, well, man, I hope this guy don't come in here. And the sheriff was one of the guys that we knew. And the guy said, they're talking about you, Rick. Rick said, oh, okay. Because they were saying they didn't believe him what he said. You know, they thought he was going nuts, you know, from all this. So I got my brother, and it was like 11 or 12 o'clock at night. And we go down the next day and to go get them, because we got took cameras down there. We were going to take pictures of it. Well, we got down there the next day, and the boy that they had down there watching it that night, supposed to have been there watching it all night, he'd been in his truck, and he said he kept hearing growls and howls and everything else all night long. He said about 3 o'clock it kind of cut down, and said he fell asleep at 3 o'clock in the morning. He said he woke up just about 6 or 6:30, and he said he had the headlights on all night long. And he said when he turned when he leaned up out of the thing, said this thing was gone. It wasn't there no more. And said they thought that me and my brother had went back and stole it. That's what they were trying to accuse us of. But like I told him, you know, we was at home. We never went nowhere. We were home from like midnight on. But anyhow, they took and got he was going. This young boy was going frantic because he'd lost this thing. And we always kind of thought maybe that they'd come down and got this thing and just made this boy pretend like it. But when we looked at his Jeep, you know, he had, you could see marks where something had tried to jiggle the door handle, to open the door handle. And it tried all 4 doors. This thing was a 4-door Jeep. And it tried all 4 doors trying to jiggle the door open and the door up. So you could see like dirty claw marks on the handle. So, but, you know, that's basically my story.
I was like 11 years old, and my friend and I were going to camp out that weekend. School was just about out for the summer, and he seen a deer out there bucking in the velvet. And he said, "Man, it's a big one." He said, "I want you to come on out and look at it, Dave." He said, "I want you me can hunt out here." I go, "Yeah, no problem. That sounds good." And so I went out there, and Mom fixed us all kind of, you know, stuff to eat, and we went behind the barn. It was about like right around 5:30, 6 o'clock at that time. It didn't get dark till around 8 or 8:30. We built a fire and stood around, you know, talking, but we're looking toward the house and toward the barn. And, you know, we kind of had our back to the fire. Long story short, the fire got out of hand. It started burning up the back countryside there. We smelled smoke, turned around like, oh my gosh, we got to get that fire out, you know? So we took our shirts off, swatted the fire, and swatted it for about 45 minutes to an hour. We finally got the fire put out. And, well, needless to say that the whole valley was filled with smoke, but at least we got the fire out. And so, well, what do you want to do? You still want to camp out? I said, oh, yeah, heck yeah, man. That's what I came out here for. But where we going to go now? He said, well, let's just go on top of the hill. There won't be no smoke up there. And there's a little level spot up there. You know, we can pitch a tent and have a little fire up there. I said, well, it sounds good to me. So we climbed up to the top of the hill. Well, it was pretty briar-infested, thorn trees, and didn't have a very good time climbing up that hill because it was very high. It was about almost 300 feet, you know, high. So we got up there, we fixed the tent up and everything, the fire. This time we put water around the fire so that, you know, we wouldn't have the same problem twice in a row. Mm-hmm. We're a kid, you know, we're, you know, 11, 12 years old, whatever. And so we just didn't think on the first time. But so we told her, you know, we ate our hamburgers and hot dogs and told some stories and stuff. It's just about right around midnight. We're going to retire for the night. So we retire and lay in the tent and talk for about another hour. Then we're ready to crash. It's around 1 o'clock, 10 after 1, whatever. So we, you know, get all snuggled up on our sleeping bags, just close our eyes And all of a sudden we hear snap, 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 snap. And we're looking at each other like, whoa. I thought you said we're gonna be alone up here, man. He goes, there ain't no one knows we're up here, man. I can't figure it out. So pretty soon we hear this heavy breathing, like, and man, we are beginning to freak out now because we know something ain't right. You know, big red flag, and we're just looking at each other. And he finally said, "Well, wait a minute, it could be my brother up here. He might be up here trying to play a trick." I go, "Oh shit, that's what it is," because it was the only thing that made sense. I didn't know nothing about no monster, no Bigfoot, or nothing. I'm only 11 years old, you know. And I said, "Oh yes, it's Dave. He's up here trying to scare." Oh, okay, because he's a jokester anyhow, you know. So he goes, "On the count of three, let's go out and scare him." I go, "Okay." He goes, 1, 2, 3. I rolled out of that tent, thinking that it was his brother on the other side of the tent. I jumped up with my arms in the air. Now, mind you, I'm trying to scare what apparently is a Bigfoot. I didn't know that at the time. And I put my hands up and I go, rah, like that. Like I'm a monster. And this thing standing there, all I can see is this fur in front of me, black fur. And I look up in the air, about 8 foot tall. This thing is what looked like to me anyhow. It's just looking down at me, and it just kind of twisted its head a little bit, like, what the? You trying to scare me, boy? Are you serious? And I'm like, sorry, Mr. Bigfoot. And I take a couple steps back, you know, and when I moved back, it took off running, but it ran right past me. You know, like, you know, it could have just took me out, and I wouldn't even be here telling you the story. But its intentions, I believe, now that I know a few other things, its intentions was not to hurt us per se, but to the part I didn't tell you was he slapped us in the head when he was in the tent too. After he breathed heavy, I forgot to tell you, he actually hit down on the tent. Smacked down on the tent and hit my friend in the head, and then he hit me in the head. I forgot to tell that part.
Okay.
All right. Now, so he hits us both in the head. So I'm thinking after all this is over with, that why did he hit us in the head like that? But I think it's because, whether we realize it or not, Bigfoot kind of sort of maybe like the guardian of the forest. One thing he doesn't like, and it's been proven time and time again, Bigfoots do not like fire. So when people, that's why they see them around campfires, because they're disgusted. They think we're just trying to destroy their home when they see a fire, because they know that fire destroys the forest. So they're disgusted, and that's why I think there's a lot of Bigfoot activity around campfire. That's my own personal opinion, anyhow. Mm-hmm. But to go on with the story, this thing takes off running, and it runs across the ridge, and it's out of sight. My friend peeks his head out of the tent because he stayed in the tent. He didn't roll out with me. He goes, "Oh my God, that was Bigfoot, Dave." I go, "Bigfoot? Is that what you call it?" He goes, "Yeah, man." He threw me a flashlight. He got his flashlight. We just left everything there, of course. Camping was over with for the night. We ran down over the hill, got all tore up with the briars and stuff all over me, and he jumped over the fence, rolled downhill. I didn't know where the fence was at. I ran smack dab into it. I flipped over, caught my foot in the fence, and I'm trying to yank my leg out because I'm thinking maybe Bigfoot came back and he's chasing us down over the hill. And I finally get my leg. I just pulled my foot out of the boot. You know what I'm saying? And I ran down to the house. Hammered on the door. Didn't knock. We hammered on it. His sister finally came to us and said, "Oh, what's the matter? Couple boys scared of the dark, huh?" I said, "Scared of the dark? My ass." I said, "There's a monster up in his head, and it hit us in the head." Oh, she rolled like she just about fell on the floor laughing. She goes, "You guys drinking that booze for, man?" He goes, "But wait till Dad hears you was drinking." And she called. We'll call him George, my friend. We'll call him George. Wait till he hears you was drinking, George, man. You're gonna be in so much trouble. All this kind of stuff. And then his brother, who we thought might have been the one that kind of scared us, or was down there trying to scare us, up there. I should say up there on the hill trying to scare us. He came running down the stairs in his pajamas. So we know it wasn't him and no one else, dude. We didn't even know where we was going to go. You know what I'm saying? When we went up on top of the hill, no one knew we was up there. And it's a 300-foot hill. So people said, I told the story to other people, and they said, oh, you know, that was just probably the neighbors up there trying to scare you. No one knew we was up there. It's a high hill. Who's going to wear a Bigfoot suit and climb a hill when it's 75 degrees outside, 1:30 in the morning? Now, who's going to do that?
Right.
So that's the story up to that point. In the morning, we had breakfast, and his dad came to the table, and he said, I heard you boys had a little run-in last night, huh? And I looked out, I go, a little run-in? Is that what you call it? And he kind of chuckled, and he looked over at his son, and we'll say George. George said, yeah, Dad, it was Bigfoot, and, well, we wasn't going to stay up here any longer. He goes, well, I don't blame you boys for that. He said, sound like he's back again, huh? And I looked at him, I goes, what do you mean he's back again? He goes, yeah, we had a run-in with him 6 months ago back out there at the barn. The cow started mooing one night, and I thought the neighbors might have been trying to oversteer one of our calves. So he said, I grabbed the gun off the wall. We went out there to see if we could find out what the commotion was all about. He said, we got in that barn. He said, took 3 or 4 steps, and out the door of this, ran this thing. He said, it's big, tall, and hairy. So I threw my gun up at it, but he said it was too fast for me. I couldn't get no beat on it. And I ain't going to shoot anything unless I got a good aim on it. You know what I'm saying? I go, yeah, I understand, sir. You know, I'm 11 years old. I'm just going along with him. And I looked at my friend. I said, why didn't you tell me this thing was out there? I said, hell, I want to come out there and camp out. He goes, dude, that was 6 months ago. He goes, I thought he was long gone by this time, you know. I've hunted these woods ever since I was knee-high to the grasshopper, and I ain't never seen nothing like this.
So these wild dogs come running by the building, and they run over and down the other side, to which within a couple seconds, we immediately start hearing them attacking something. Fight is going on. We thought it was actually just the dogs themselves were fighting with each other. And it goes on, I would say, for, 3 to 5 seconds. And then we hear very, very easily hear another louder, deeper dog noise, growling, but in an attack kind of sound. That this thing, it was obvious whatever they ran over the hill on, it was this. And they were attacking this thing, and it was attacking back. That went on, I don't know, I would say maybe 6-7 seconds, and then we start hearing yelping. And loud yelping and pain, and it is the pack of dogs. And what starts happening is intermittently, like a second here, a second there, we start seeing dogs in the air coming over up this huge pile and hitting the ground, and some of them staying down for a second, getting up, limping, some of them, and then other one comes over. I remember 3 specifically this happened to, and we're all looking at each other like, whoa, what the heck's going on here? Then the majority of them, I think there was 5 or 6 of these wild dogs, they all start running back the way they came. And I mean, hauling ass. And some of them having trouble running, they're limping, and obviously some of them injured. And they are gone. And we're watching them go away, and we're like, what the heck was that? And then I remember hearing my one buddy say, guys, what what is that? And we all simultaneously look at the hill, and what is crawled up on the top of this pile is a massive animal. Looks, I mean, it looks like a wolf German Shepherd kind of mix. And it is sitting at the top of this hill, and it's watching the dogs run away. It is not looking at us. I don't know if it knew we were there at that point. I don't think it did know that we were there. And what it did next was, it lifts its leg and it starts urinating. But we didn't laugh, because when it started urinating, it let out a stream that was like, I mean, literally it looked like somebody turned on a garden hose and started, spraying. And that personally for me scared me, because the force at which this dog was just, some people might think this sounds funny, but it wasn't. The force at which this dog was urinating was disturbing. It was like, there were pieces of this material flying up in the air. And, looking back, watching these dogs run away and it's urinating, I mean, I personally just think it was basically saying, this is my territory. I just took care of business. Don't come back here. I'm marking my territory. And my one friend started backing up. He said he was starting to go back inside, but he was keeping his eye on this animal, and he tripped up. And I remember he reached forward and he grabbed the shoulder of another one of my friends, and they kind of fell back and they hit one of these metal things that we had created this wall with. And it made a pretty good noise, and it snapped its head to right at us. And immediately we saw, and got scared, we saw its eyes. And looking back, the reason we were able to see, because it was night, the reason we were able to see its eyes is, looking back, is we had that fire going inside. Even though we had these walls built up and everything, there was still light coming out, and it was going off of its eyes. And they looked like they had a power source, though. They were glowing, and they were like a yellowish, like amber kind of color. I've never to this day seen another animal that had a color in its eyes like this. And it was staring at us, and you could see, they were big eyes, and you could see where its eyes were looking. You saw its eyeballs moving, and what it did next was so alien and just horrifying that, to this day, and right now, whenever I tell this story, I always have the same reaction to this day. Right now, the hairs on the back of my neck are standing up. I have the goose chicken skin right now. I mean, this was something out of a nightmare, what this animal did. And let me go back real quick to what we're seeing on all fours. Is this dog looks like the size. We've never seen a dog this size. We've never seen anything, a dog look like this. I mean, it looking back on it, I mean, at least the size of a bear. I've seen bear before. Besides in a zoo, I've actually been into woods before, and I've seen black bear before. I've never seen a grizzly, and I'm glad I haven't. But I've seen black bear, and I've seen some pretty big ones, and this thing was every bit as big as the biggest I've ever seen. In fact, quite honestly, I'm pretty sure that it was bigger than any black bear that I've ever seen, even on TV. This thing ends up, I mean, oh my God. I mean, I have the goosebumps.
That's right. Take your time.
Stands up on two legs, not like a bear does, where, when a bear stands up, they have, you can tell it's not used to doing it. It does it to get a better view of its surroundings or make itself bigger against other predators or something like that. This thing stood up on two legs, like it's very comfortable doing it, and that it's used to doing it. And it stood up, and it had, the dog legs and the way that dogs' legs are shaped. And something that really stood out to me and to all of us when we talked about it later was the size of the muscles in the legs. I mean, as every bit as big as any man's quads. And I liken looking back at how big and, defined these muscles in its legs were to a bodybuilder. And I hadn't really noticed much other than the head and anything, but I do remember the neck, very thick. And whenever this thing even just barely moved, and when it stood up, you saw muscles in it, rippling. You saw them moving to get the creature to stand, stable and upright. At that point, we all had turned around and were fighting to push each other to get inside of this building as fast as we could, because within a heartbeat of this thing standing up, it was a paradigm had shifted. I mean, we had all of a sudden just witnessed something that none of us had ever seen, that none of us thought existed. And, we all said the same thing as, obviously, first and foremost, panic, just terror, fear. But in our heads, you're thinking, we just saw a werewolf.